Chapter 6, Purchasing Investment Properties. The most important thing for a young man is to establish credit, a reputation, and character. John D. Rockefeller.
Did you guys know John D. Rockefeller was America's first billionaire?
Yeah, I've heard that.
I know that because actually we don't talk about it in this book, but the other program that we do is where we buy this real estate around the nation at these 90% discounts. It's actually super, super cool. Anyway, hey, for this chapter, we're going to be talking about purchasing investment properties. And we've brought in a special guest, Tyler Bennett, who I've had as a business partner now for a number of years. And Tyler, you're actually president of Strategic Lending. Give everyone just a little bit of a brief understanding, synopsis. What is strategic lending and what is your expertise?
Thanks, Kris. Thanks for having me. Strategic Lending is the in-house finance company for the REIC system. We specialize in investment purchases, cash out refinances, and supporting the REIC infrastructure and clients as they go through the process. And we really enjoy working with the REIC clients as they have a special sense of excitement as they go through the system. And it's a unique approach to doing loans.
Yeah, you know, Tyler, one of the big reasons why I've got you here today is because it drives me crazy. When I got started in real estate, I was so skeptical about the entire loan process. I always felt like there was fraud and someone's taking advantage of me, and I can't read through the paperwork at closing, and it was super frustrating experience. Now that was a whole lot of me to learn about me, right? Good experience for me. But I also got clear that for me to really nail investment finance, I had to team up with someone like you. I've never met someone better in the field that knows their stuff than you. And you've got to work with someone that specializes in finance, because in real estate, the most frustrating thing is when you hit the wall. And for all of you that are listening that are real estate investors, this is totally out of the book. You know what I'm talking about when I say the wall. That's where you're trying to get that next property and the bank shut you down.
Yeah, especially, Kris, in the last couple of years, as the finance and loan world has completely done a 360-degree change. And we've had to adapt to that and make sure that we're able to push through that wall that you're referencing.
You know, the purchasing process, it's really one of the most critical aspects of real estate investing. It's extremely complex, at times stressful, but for these reasons, investment lending is definitely not a do-it-yourself game. I know because I've tried. You need a broker who can navigate you through the complexities and pitfalls and get you the deals closed. So Tyler, thank you for being with us, because we're going to go on a bit of a journey here. And I think it's going to be one of the most eye-opening chapters for anyone with real estate experience listening, because we practice something called transparent real estate. And if there's anything non-transparent in all real estate, it's the whole lending aspect. So I'm glad we get to create some clarity today. Now, in this chapter, I'm not going to detail everything there is to know about investment lending, because we could take about 150 hours on that. But what I want to make sure you get out of this is I want to equip you with knowledge to choose the right mortgage broker, since this is one of the most valuable members of your investment team. Now, I'm also going to provide you with the most important guidelines to follow in the world of financing, because Tyler, like you said, it is changing dramatically. Now, if you follow these guidelines and then choose the right mortgage broker, and if you'll let him or her handle all the complexities, you're going to be able to grow and optimize your real estate portfolio. Here's the following guidelines. Understand how to qualify for loans. 2, understand the purpose of a purchase appraisal. 3, become profit conscious versus rate conscious. I love that conversation. The next one, finance multiple properties and protect your future portfolio by selecting the right broker and loans. And last, manage your debt to income ratio through the compassionate financing process. That's what we're going to be covering here in this chapter. So we've got a pretty exciting lineup. Let's first get cracking on how we qualify for loans. Because, you know, as I've mentioned, the financing process should begin before you even start looking for properties. And Tyler, you'll be happy, because in the last, we had Steve Earle here on the last chapter, and we said, man, before you get out and start even making offers, make sure you've lined up your ducks and that you are pre-qualified. And Tyler, one of the things I've appreciated you've done with our clients is that when you say they're pre-qualified, they're pre-qualified. I can't remember the last time one of our people ever got something under contract and you weren't able to fulfill on it, which actually I think is a pretty amazing feat. Now, there's also many factors that are going to determine your credit worthiness. So let's actually go into these right now. The first one is credit score. Your credit score measures your credit risk level. This is created by the Fair Isaac Corporation, blah, blah, blah. I don't want to get into it too much. Credit scores go as high as 850, as low as 300. Go Wikipedia this stuff. But know this, just like that quote from Rockefeller, America's first billionaire. He says the most important thing a young man or woman can establish is credit, a reputation, and character. And credit is a powerful, powerful tool and resource to doing real estate, even though it doesn't have much of a financial value, right? It's not a bank account worth a certain amount of money. And yet my credit is a tool, and someone else having credit is also a tool in partnering that can allow me to do real estate. So depending on your game plan, the current market, your credit score, and really having it between the 600 and 800 levels is going to be the most useful. I definitely recommend also that if you've been using your credit, or if your credit isn't over 600, you've got to, even if it's over 700, you're going to need some regular credit repair. In fact, if you even want to know what your credit score is, go to www.myfico.com/credit education. And that's how you can learn how to improve it and understand it. Now, the second factor beyond credit, Tyler, I know that you're constantly evaluating is income. Obviously, the higher the income, the more, the bigger, the better loans you can secure, right?
Correct.
So remember that on the Straight Path system, we only purchase properties at or below the median value in any particular area. And this ultimately means that it doesn't take a lot of income to get approved for these deals. For example, one of my clients purchased a home while making just $13 an hour, Ben. And so that's kind of cool. Now, so we've talked about credit, income. The next one is job history. Lenders want to see a person that has generally how much work history?
2 years of consecutive work history, typically.
Yeah, and you want that in the same industry as well, right?
Correct.
So for example, if I had a job last year in computers and now a year later I've got a job in making quilts, I'm going to have
It's going to make it difficult.
it's not going to work out as well. So job history, generally 2 years. Sometimes you can get away with doing less. There are certain ways to bend rules, but in general, you want to work towards that. Sometimes I'll counsel people, Tyler, they'll come in my office and they've got 15 years of great work experience. And then they're saying, hey, I'm thinking about changing professions. And I say, well, you've got to consider the money you will or won't make in that decision, but also consider this. That could affect your ability or impact your ability to qualify for real estate. So factor that into your decision-making if you weren't. The next one is debt to income ratio. And we're going to actually take some time on this one. What is debt to income ratio, Tyler?
Debt to income ratio is really looking at a balance sheet, and you're looking at income versus liabilities. The neat thing about mortgages is we're only accountable for the liabilities that report on a credit. On your credit rating that you referred to previously. And so it's literally measuring how much income you have versus the debt versus the prospective new debt that you're going to acquire with the new mortgage. The neat thing about the majority of our purchases is we do get to offset that with the projected rent income. And then we create ratios. And banks like to see certain ratios.
What's typical? What do they really want to be seeing in a ratio? What average ratio don't they want you to go over when they look at your debt compared to your income?
40 to 45% is about where they cap it at.
So you really want to be under 50%.
Correct.
So let's just take a moment and talk about what really is a debt to income ratio and how do I calculate it? I've actually got this calculator on page 132. It says, hey, add up all your total monthly payments of all your debts, and the cost of those debts, let's say, might be, let's call it $2,000 a month. And then you divide it by your total monthly income. Let's call my income $5,000 a month.
And Kris, we do get to use gross income
Oh,
as well. Not take home, but gross income we get to use.
Yeah. So if I were to do that, the $2,000 divided by the $5,000, my $2,000 of monthly debt, which could include a $400 car payment, an $1,100 mortgage, and some other bills and credit card debts that I got. And if I'll divide that by my gross income,
Correct.
Then the resulting fraction is the percentage of debt relative to your income. Now, in this specific example, if my mortgage, auto loans, and credit cards totaled $1,800 a month, and my total monthly income was $5,000, then $1,800 divided by $5,000 is 0.36 or 36% debt to income ratio. And banks will let me generally go up to 45%.
Yeah, 40 to 50. But
So-
yeah, 45% is a good number.
So I've got some room there where I can go and leverage and get a home.
Absolutely.
Okay, so this is going to be really critical. I want to actually dive into something that you shared, Tyler, that was super important. When an investor typically gets into something like a rental, and if on my credit, I'm showing that I've got this investment property and it costs $1,000 a month, and if I'm only renting it for $1,000 a month, then what's the bank going to actually see that as?
What they'll do right now, the guidelines will give you credit for 75% of that $1,000 or that projected rent, so $750. So in reality, all we're qualifying you for is a $250 payment. It's like a little car loan, yet it's a mortgage.
Yeah. So if we're really clear with each other, if the bank will only take 75%, let's call it $750 of rent, but I've actually got $1,000 on my credit score reflected there with this debt, then it actually looks like my debt to income ratio went up $250.
Correct.
And if I do that one or two more times, that could max me out and have me hit that 40, 45, 50% where the banks say, sorry, dude, love to give you a loan, but we can't because you're a real estate investor. You're doing rentals like most real estate investors. You get a couple homes and that's it.
Yep.
And so that's the problem. What's so cool is when we get into compassionate financing, Tyler, tell us what's so different about that and tell us how that actually reverses the debt to income ratio.
Well, with the compassionate financing system, we generally collect 10, 20% above market rent on average. And so that $1,000 may turn into $1,250 or $1,200 a month. And let's say the mortgage is $1,000 or $900. We take 75% of now the actual rental income through the compassionate financing, and we're positive. We're either break even or positive.
Yeah, that's
so
what
that
we're
allows
generally
us to go
seeing.
further.
I remember doing this actually on my first home. That first home that a lot of people know about, I rented out my basement for $550. I had a mortgage of about $550. And because my basement brought in that $550, it really on paper made it look as if I had a debt of maybe $100 a month, right? They took 75% out. It looked really small. So when I went to go say, I want to buy another home, the bank said, well, no problem. Your house, your mortgage is taken care of. That's why so often when we talk about clients that are brand new to real estate, don't even have a home themselves, sometimes they buy homes with like a mother-in-law apartment because the rent that they can prove to the bank can offset the mortgage, making it easier to qualify. And now we're managing debt to income ratio. This is just something that we don't see happen very much in the market, not with typical real estate at least, especially people that are doing spec building and qualifying for more than they can afford or getting into rentals. That really takes your ratios and kills them. And then they wonder, man, I hit the wall. Why can't I keep qualifying? That's the problem. And that's what we have a solution for when we talk about this.
Straight pass sign number 11. Always be planning ahead by improving your credit worthiness in the present. Specifically, focus on raising your credit score and income, developing a stable work history, and managing your debt-to-income ratio.
Okay, the next session, let's go to this next part. It's called Understanding Your Purchase Appraisal. Once you've got a home under contract and you've performed a walkthrough inspection, it's time to secure a purchase appraisal. Now, I call it a purchase appraisal because there's lots of different types of appraisals, and a purchase appraisal can be one of the strictest. Be aware that an appraisal will almost always render a lower value than you determined in your comparative market analysis for a number of reasons. Appraisals do not always give an accurate market value. They simply give you a reflection or the bank a reflection of what you're trying to accomplish. In other words, it's to prove to the bank that the home is at least worth what we say it is. And that way the bank will actually do some lending on it. However, how do banks react? How can banks react, Tyler, if we've got an appraisal that shows massive equity?
Well, the first thing they're going to do is they're going to structure the loan based off the lower of the purchase price or the appraised value. So that appraisal value coming in higher than the purchase price does us no good in regards to the loan. Secondly, it could raise some red flags and cause them to ask themselves, well, why is this such a good deal? Is there something fishy going on? Is this an arm's length transaction? Is it a bailout? It really can just raise questions in the bank's mind as to if it's a legitimate deal or not. And so typically appraisers know this, and they don't want to be subject to being on a blacklist or a watch list with the bank. And so they err on the conservative side.
Well, and this creates a lot of problems for investors because they're hoping that the appraisal will tell them what a home is worth. And that's actually not the function of the appraisal. That's just a misnomer. And so now you get investors where 95% of appraisals come in pretty close to the purchase price. And what I want people to understand from this book, ultimately, a purchase appraisal simply confirms to the bank that the home is worth at least what you're paying for it. It's not supposed to be an indicator exactly of what the home could be worth. The CMA is going to do a much better job of that. And the cool thing is, we're not flipping. We don't need to sell tomorrow. So the value is important, but it's not like we're going to leverage that information tomorrow. This is a short-term buy and hold strategy. Because of these strict restrictions, though, appraisers are actually required to throw out any comparables that can show a 10% difference in price. This was fascinating when I learned this from appraisers. They'll show you that if a home is more than 10% different in gross margin, and sometimes having the difference in the values that far apart, they'll sometimes throw out a really good comparable because it's not similar enough to what the home is under contract for. So the appraisers have regulations that they need to follow that can significantly impact and restrict the value of a home because they're just interested in getting ultimately a job done. The compassionate financing, however, being that buy and hold strategy, you don't always need to worry about the appraisal coming in exactly where you want it to or where the CMA did, because the main point is this: don't be scared away from deals by low appraisals. Remember, the purchase appraisal only confirms to the bank the value you want to see for specific purposes, and your CMA is a much more accurate reflection of a home's actual market value. Know the market, perform accurate research, trust your research and your CMA, and then use the compassionate financing to hold your property 2 to 5 years, and the appraisal will accurately reflect the market value when you sell the home to your tenant. That's the appraisal that we're interested in, is when we go to sell the house. This next section, we're going to have a hoot with because this one really, through experience, blew my mind apart. So Tyler, I'm going to lean on you on this one because this section, I wrote an article on this a long time ago. It eventually became a big part of the book, which is learning how to become profit conscious versus rate conscious. And in your best guesstimation, what does that mean? Becoming profit conscious versus just rate conscious.
Really, just to sum it up, it means that we're focused on the profits or the potential that a particular house offers us, as opposed to whether it's a 5.5 or a 5.625 interest rate. There's a lot that goes into determining what the interest rate is going to be, and typically it ends up being dollars difference, between an 1/8 or 1/4% interest rate, and it might make sense to go to one bank versus another bank in regards to the whole strategy, or we go with one bank for the first home knowing that we need to go to another bank for the second home, even though they may not offer the best rates, and there's a strategy behind it, and the difference in payment is so minor that if we step back and focus on the profits and the big picture, that it really shouldn't matter to us.
So let's step back and actually get 30,000 feet in the air, and let's take a look at the financial paradigms that we're given. Because by the way, the financial paradigm we have, less than 2% of Americans ever become financially free. So if all of us are leading each other into thinking, oh my gosh, interest rate's the most important thing, I need the lowest interest rate, there's a lot of real estate, there's a lot of investment that you're going to miss out on. Because the truth is, here's the unknown secret: higher interest rates can make you more money than lower interest rates.
Huh? How does that work?
Dude, let me repeat that again. Higher interest rates can make you more money than lower interest rates. So allow me to explain. Investors keep their eyes on the profits. They focus on what they gain by buying a home, as opposed to consumers who focus primarily on interest rates and what they lose by acquiring a home. Through Straight Path Real Estate, we're able to purchase multiple properties, but this can't happen if your sole or primary expectation is to get the best interest rates. This secret is really quite simple. The more flexible you're willing to be with your loans, the more loans you're able to secure. Meaning, if interest rate becomes a super big deal to me because, oh my gosh, the difference between bank A and bank B is a $22 a month difference because I'm anal, then maybe I'm only going to go buy 3 homes and in 5 years make a couple $100,000. Let's say $300,000. But if I was able to get a little bit more loose and flexible, I can actually get a 4th home on my credit, a 5th home on my credit, and maybe the interest rates aren't even that great. And instead of making $100,000 on that property, I only make $98,000. So in other words, the interest rate can definitely decrease my profits, But if I'm not too worried about being rate conscious, I'll actually permit myself to get more investments, and sometimes more investments, sometimes with not that great of interest rate, which ultimately can lead to way more profits. And I've seen this happen time and time again.
Yeah, I have an example of that just happened last week, Kris, where interest rates on investment properties were hovering around 5.375% to 5.5% for the last couple of months. So one of our clients was out looking for homes with the expectation of 5.375%. When it came time to put the home under contract, it was 5.75%, and he could have reacted and pulled out of that deal because of the higher interest rate. But as we sat down and really looked at it, it didn't matter. It was still a phenomenal deal, and he would have lost out on a lot of equity, a great cash flow house, had he been hung up on that 5.375% interest rate.
Yeah, it's like that. It's like people say, don't jump over $1 to pick up a nickel, right?
Exactly.
Okay. Here's a call out here. You can get pre-qualified to see how much you can actually qualify for. We use a different matrix, a different system in seeing how much you can qualify for, because this isn't typical real estate. This is Straight Path Real Estate. So log on to straightpathrealestate.com, and there we can actually hook you up with a coach that can tell you just how much real estate you can qualify for. I think that's going to be kind of cool.
Straight Path sign number 12. When financing your investment homes, keep your eye on the profits, not on your interest rates. Use the banks that allow you to purchase the most real estate, not those with the lowest rates.
Awesome. Okay, now let's talk about, we've been talking about this a little bit. Let's talk about financing multiple properties and protecting your future portfolio with the right broker and the right loan. Now, I've got my right broker, I've got my right loan, because ultimately REIC is nothing more than my own personal, and for so many of us here, it's our own personal power team to do all the real estate. I actually, years ago, many of you may not know this, I was a loan officer. I got my license. I was actually working with Tyler. Tyler was far better at it than me, but I got involved because I was skeptical and I didn't quite understand the system, and I really wanted to figure out, well, what is this yield spread premium and just things I didn't get. And I've developed this massive respect for Tyler to the point where I said, man, I can either keep trying to do this on my own, or I'm gonna beat a dead horse again. If you want something done right, don't do it yourself. And for me, that's Tyler. I mean, you're doing now dozens of loans on a regular basis. And I can't remember the last time I heard a squawk or a peep, or it didn't go through, or we had problems. And I know you got problems, but you are so thorough and so good. I want to stress the importance of having the right power team. And I've had to go through hundreds of people to get people like Tyler on the team, something I'm super grateful for. So let's talk a little bit about what it means to have the right broker and to know how to do the right loans, because there's certainly a lot of different kind of loans and programs that are out there. You know, one of my personal secrets for rapidly acquiring so many homes is really understanding how the banking industry works. You know, banks ultimately decide whether or not to accept your next purchase based on what mortgages are already on your credit, how quickly they were acquired, and what banks they're with, how your profile was submitted, and what you're doing with the properties. So if you're just working with any Yahoo or your sister-in-law that happens to be a processor or mortgage officer for a bank so you can hook them up with a little commission, literally they may be helping you screw the pooch on your next real estate deal because they don't know how to submit it. They don't know how to package the file, and they're just focusing on your next deal. Tyler, I know, tell me a little bit about what it's like to pre-qualify clients for tons of deals before you've even bought your next one.
Yeah. What we do is we understand the REIC system and the big picture. And so as we go through the pre-qualification process, we're not focused on just one loan. Most loan officers or loan originators, really the average consumer does one loan every 4 to 5 years. And so they focus on one loan and they know that's all they're going to get out of this client for an extended period of time, where we focus on the fifth loan, understanding the big picture, and then we structure loans 1 through 4 accordingly, so we make sure that we can come through on loan number 5.
Well, and there's a formula to this too, right? Knowing which banks up front that you're going to be going to next so that you can actually keep consistently purchasing and finding the homes. It's
exactly. Each bank has different guidelines, and so we will strategically put the first loan with one particular bank, knowing that they wouldn't have done loan number 3 or 4, but they will do loan number 1. And so that we always ensure that we have resources available at our hands as far as banks that we can go to make sure we we complete the transactions.
Tyler, I want you to add to this if there's anything you think I'm missing, but I came up in this book with 4 pieces of criteria of what I'd recommend if you want to pick the right kind of mortgage broker. Number 1, make sure that more than 50% of their experience and current loan volume is working on investment products, investment loans, because it's a total different world than helping someone buy their next primary residence.
And there's probably very few that even meet that criteria out there.
You got it. The next, they should be at least closing 30 loans per year to remain really knowledgeable enough, cutting edge on the banks that are still in business versus not, and what products are available.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%, especially with the market and how rapidly it's changing with all the different guidelines and legislation and everything that's been going on the last couple of years.
They've got to at least have enough experience to have put multiple homes, even up to 5 homes on one person's credit. And if they've never been able to do that, my guess is they're not going to be a good fit as part of your power team.
Yeah, it ties in well with number 1 right there with investment property lending.
Yeah, and then I also recommend that they're working with at least 20 different banks with various investment products so that if one fails out, or they actually can start weaving in between them.
Yeah, great recommendations.
Straight path sign number 13. Choose a mortgage broker who specializes in working with investors and who is experienced in financing multiple properties on one person's credit, rather than those who focus on interest rates. Straight path sign number 14. When negotiating, ask the seller to pay your mortgage broker's closing fees. Our recommendation is to ask the seller to pay 2%, which means that the broker can make his or her fees on the front end and will likely not increase your interest rate on the back end of the loan to ensure they get paid. Having the seller pay 2% toward your loan fees typically means that you get the net rate the bank can afford. This gives you the lowest debt-to-income ratio and the best cash flow.
You know, this is kind of cool, but let me actually, I don't even know if the book's going to talk about this, so this might be kind of cool for our listener base. Check this out. When REIC, one of the things that we've implemented in our system is that loan officers have a couple of ways of getting paid. They can either get paid on the front of a loan or on the back of the loan. This is not the conversation that most loan officers have with people. They want to kind of keep the back end, or the YSP, the yield spread premium, a bit of a secret. And then it turns real estate very non-transparent. It can feel a little underhanded. People can get frustrated. Rates show up different than what was quoted. It's a total mess. If you're listening to this and you've done real estate, chances are you know what it's like to show up at the table to close on a loan and somehow feel that you're left in the dark and that something's happening that you don't get. Now, you could be, someone could be taking advantage of you. Your loan officer or a bank or something could be doing something maybe a little underhanded or something that they didn't tell you. Or you could just be skeptical because you don't get it, right? I mean, you're signing 50 freaking thousand million words on the papers and you've got arthritis in your right hand after you've been signing for 30 minutes. So one of the things that I appreciate about what you do, Tyler, and what we do at REIC is that when we get our homes under contract, because we control this whole process for our clients, we always ask the seller to actually pay a couple of points up front to us, to the mortgage broker, so that actually it debilitates us from necessarily making YSP on the back. Actually, if we can make all our money on the front from the seller of the home, then we almost become completely disarmed from making money on the back, which is generally involves adjusting the interest rate. This can ensure actually that our members get the lowest interest rate possible. We can't raise or adjust it, and yet you also get paid to do a really good job, but it's paid for by the seller and not your investor.
It's a really refreshing way to do loans, Kris. Knowing that we're offering our clients the absolute best rate and best product that's available on the market, and there's nothing out there that's going to deviate or motivate us to do otherwise.
Yeah.
Straight path sign number 15. Maximize your portfolio by utilizing flexible loan programs.
Let's talk about loan programs for a quick second, Tyler. There's a lot out there. There's ARMs and there's interest onlys and there's thises and that's. And, you know, I know that we come from the standpoint that, hey, we're going to be holding on to this mortgage for a few years. It's not a 30-year mortgage. Our goal isn't to pay off the house by paying it off 3 times over 30 years, right? We've got this short-term buy and hold strategy. So as a result, what type of products do you usually look at working with, period?
Great question, Kris. And the answer is the product that makes the most sense for the individual that we're working with. Typically, that leads us to either 30-year fixed because the rates are close enough to that of an ARM or an interest only or lower that the payments are almost equal. At times, we'll do a 5-year or a 7-year ARM because a bank will motivate us with rates, and that will increase the cash flow. So it depends on the individual and the bank and the guidelines and everything that we're working with.
So it sounds like it's a science at the end of the day.
Absolutely.
I mean, ultimately, it's just which number is bigger. If I'm going to hold on to a home for 3 years, it might be worth getting a lower interest rate for the first few years, get rid of the house, and hey, I beat the market by having a low interest rate. And there are other times I hear what you're saying is you can get really competitive rates on a very conservative 30-year and actually build $100, $150 a month to principal. And that could also make more sense depending on your client's credit worthiness or financial situation.
Yeah, you got it.
Yeah. So ultimately, I think we're looking at playing a pretty safe game. We just want to make sure we keep the payment as low as possible, which is another reason why we don't want to make money necessarily on the back of the loan, because if we can have the lowest interest rate, that'll make sure that you get the lowest debt to income ratio. It'll ensure that you have the easiest ability to qualify for the next home because you've got the highest cash flow on your investment property. Okay.
Straight path sign number 16. Plan 10 years ahead when financing investment properties. Protect your future portfolio by making wise lending decisions. Leverage the knowledge of a competent, investor-oriented mortgage broker to accomplish this. Also, be aware of how you can increase your future chances of getting financed, including setting up and seasoning corporations and improving your credit.
Awesome. Now, to really wrap this chapter up, Tyler, and I appreciate you being here tonight. I want to talk about beyond the loan, understanding the full purchase process, because really purchasing real estate, there's so much more to it than even the loan itself. There's a whole process with that. And in the book, I sum it up by giving you 7 different steps of protection you can take to keep from buying a real estate lemon. The first one is, and by the way, this is great for people that are really nervous and skeptical about getting into real estate because they're like, oh my gosh, what are all the what if worst case scenarios that can go wrong? Well, I've got 7 levels of protection. The first one is I get a walkthrough inspection to see if I can identify or find problems. The second one is I get to do once it's under contract, a professional home inspection. Then I'm going to receive seller disclosures. I've got home warranties, insurance policies, placing the property into an LLC, and compassionate financing contracts. All 7 of these ultimately come together to give me a level of protection where my real estate has never come back to hurt me. Let's just quickly look through these and make sure we've got a good understanding of them. The first one is a walkthrough visual inspection. In fact, Stephen, we've got you here with us. One of the big benefits, I know that you've got a lot of experience when you came to work with me in inspections, and talk about visual inspection and the benefit of that when you're actually considering a property by walking through it.
Sure. First of all, when you're going to get a visual inspection, you want to make sure that you're getting one from a competent inspector. Not all inspectors are equal. What I would recommend is getting one from someone who has either a background in engineering or general contracting, or they've built homes, something like that. And a visual inspection is great because that gives you a little bit of added security that someone who is professional, who is bonded and insured, has gone through the home and made sure that the home is up to par, that the roof isn't caving in, and that it's structurally sound. And that's typically what you're looking for as an investor, is to make sure that the home is structurally sound, that it's functional, and that you're not, again, walking into a lemon.
Well, and that's cool because the first one is you've got a visual walkthrough inspection. The second one is you have a professional home inspection. The visual is the one you're going to do when you're actually walking through for the first time. And guess what? You don't have to be a licensed contractor to walk through a house and look under the sink and say, leaky faucet, that's a problem. Or I see spots on the ceiling. Maybe there was a water leak, right? I mean, visually, you can catch 98% of most of what's wrong in a house. And then after it's under contract, you can then pay the professional to catch the 2 or 3 little things that you may have not seen or noticed.
Right. The biggest thing that I would say and I kind of swapped that a little bit. I was talking about the professional first, but for a visual walkthrough, you want to one of the biggest things is just to look up, right? Some of your major problems will come from water intrusion. That comes from either there being a leak in the roof or leak around the windows or wherever it is. But just look up at the ceiling, look around, check the pipes a little bit,
Yeah. So after you've done your visual inspection, you've got a good idea of what you're walking through. Rarely will you pay a professional inspector to come in to catch something that you didn't, but it can happen. We then get on to our third level of protection, the seller disclosures. By law, the seller has to fill out typically a 4 or 5 page document to reveal everything and anything about the house or problems there could be. You're going to learn some history, like, 3 years ago, we had a swamp cooler leak into the house and we got it repaired, and we've got the licensed contractor's official notice that it's been handled and taken care of, and you can see that the job is held up well. Oh, good. Now I've got some good background on what's going on there. Number 4, I've got home warranty, which is mostly for things like appliances. You can ask the seller to pay for that if you want. Something breaks within the first year, it's covered. The next layer of home protection is that you have an insurance policy. Guess what? If a pipe breaks in the winter or something goes wrong, insurance is there to cover it. And then number 6, you put it into an LLC. And what an LLC or a limited liability company is most of you may know this. If you have any real estate that you're not living in, you should put it into a corporation. And the reason why, if you put it into something like a limited liability company, if you ever got sued or if anyone ever tripped on your property, I've never had it happen on my hundreds of homes, but if it did, then typically people can't sue me in my personal life. They have a hard time piercing that corporate veil between the LLC and my personal life. And so the LLC is some suit protection. But I think of all the layers of protection, the coolest one is the compassionate financing. With a renter, I'm going to put someone in the home. If something breaks, who are they going to call? Me. The pipe breaks, they're going to call me. But if I'm doing the compassionate financing, when a pipe breaks, who are they calling? They're calling the plumber. And that's the biggest difference here. That's where I've had problems on homes before, but the tenants that are working towards home ownership and buying these, they have stepped up. They're putting the money in. They're taking ownership, accountability, responsibility. They're making this home theirs. And so when you ultimately look at these 7 layers of protection, I'm still waiting to buy a lemon. Well, I'm not. I actually don't want to buy one. But I'll tell you that with these 7 layers of protection, I've really guarded myself from problems. So take some note there that if you're going to go out and do some real estate, those are the seven layers that are going to come in and really protect you. Tyler, I want to thank you again for taking the time to come with us and talk about mortgages. I really appreciate your expertise. And if you had a last piece of advice for anyone listening to this that's really confused and thinking, oh man, how do I find a mortgage broker like Tyler Bennett? What would you say to them?
It's a great question, Kris, and I appreciate you having me here. It's been fun.
It's the impossible question. I want to make it a good one.
Really, I think it comes down to finding somebody that has their best interest in mind. And that goes along with educating them on the process, maybe even teaching them how loans work, showing them rate sheets, and really having an invested interest in their success in their investment, because getting the loan is just a piece to the puzzle, and it's part of what needs to happen to invest in real estate, but it's not the end all. And most loan officers will treat it that way. So it's really getting with someone that's going to take the time to do an extensive pre-qualification, to provide a great loan experience, but ultimately deliver a quality product that is the best product on the market that will allow you to have the most success and the most cash flow through this system.
And Tyler, I appreciate you sharing that. And what I hear you saying is transparency, because that's what doesn't exist in the typical loan world. I know you've also had some great success implementing compassionate financing. I know before we started working together, you had some rentals. What's that experience been like?
You referenced it just a little bit previously, where I was getting the phone calls at 2, 3 in the morning, and the AC went out, and I'm paying $800 to fix a compressor or whatever it's called in it, and as I learned about the compassionate financing model and converted my houses into that, I don't ever get phone calls. I get checks on the 1st every single month.
love
and
it.
and as a matter of fact, I have 2 tenants right now in 2 of my homes that are both working on the mortgages to purchase the houses. And both of them are about 8, 9 months ahead of schedule on what we anticipated. We're trying to get them the tax credit
I love
and get it done by the end of this month or in May. And they love the houses. And I've only had a positive experience. My tenants have had a positive experience, and it's really adjusted my paradigm and mindset as to how to invest in real estate.
I love it, Tyler. Hey, thank you again for joining us. If you're looking for the right kind of mortgage broker, if you're looking for the right products, or if you're looking for a team that knows how to continue buying multiple pieces of property, we've shared that with you. Go out and find it and create that team. And if you'd like a little bit of assistance in doing that, you can contact us at straightpathrealestate.com. We can show you just how much you can qualify for and look at getting you on the straight path. Best of luck to you. Thanks, Tyler.
Thanks, Kris.